Established in 2010 and headquartered in Singapore, BIPO is a leading global payroll and HR solutions provider, supporting businesses in over 170 countries. BIPO deliver multi-country payroll outsourcing and employer of record (EOR) services, integrated with an award-winning, cloud-based HR management system and Athena BI analytics tool, powered by tech and driven by data, to automate HR processes, ensure compliance, and provide workforce insights. With 50-plus offices worldwide, BIPO combines global compliance, local HR expertise, and scalable technology to manage the entire employee lifecycle for global and remote teams. To learn more, visit www.biposervice.com.
Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us today at Global PayFest 2026. Whether you're tuning in from Singapore, London, New York, or somewhere in between, we are glad to have you here with us. Today's session is called The Future of Payroll, and I'll direct. We are not here to talk about the small improvements or minor fixes. We're here because payroll, one of the most basic and core functions in any organization, is at a turning point. And quite frankly, it's due for a rethink. AI, real-time payments, borderless workforces, and compliance rules that are changing faster than most systems can keep up. They're not coming, they are already here. The question isn't whether payroll needs to change. The question is whether your organization is ahead of it or behind it. That's what we're going to dig into today together. I'm joined today by three people I'm genuinely happy to have this conversation with. Among them, they've seen payroll break in every way possible, across every continent, and they spent their careers figuring out how to fix it. First, we have VA, who is a corporate and business strategist and respected consultant who has spent years asking the uncomfortable questions that most organizations avoid. He doesn't talk features, he talks about what payroll means at the boardroom level, the strategic risk, the competitive cost of getting it wrong, and the opportunity in getting it right. He's going to be our main speaker today, and if you leave the session with one framework that changes how you think about payroll, it'll be because of the pointers that VA and our team are sharing with you today. VA, if you just want to say a quick hello.
Hi everyone. Pleasure meeting you.
Perfect. Next, we have Frank. Frank is a solution expert who lives at the crossroads of client pain and platform capability. He's fluent in both languages. He understands what breaking looks like on your side, as well as understanding the precise details of what a modern payroll solution needs to look like to fix it. He sees the problem from both sides of the table, which makes him the person that you want to have in the room when theory has to become a working answer. Frank, how are you doing today?
Hey, Hans. Doing great. Great to be here. And hopefully I can bridge some of this concept into execution.
Perfect. And finally with us, we have Zach Ma. Zach has built his expertise connecting Asia and the rest of the world. He's led some of the largest, most complex cross-border payroll deals in the region. Multinational accounts, thousands of headcounts, multiple jurisdictions running simultaneously. He's proof that if you can make payroll work in the APAC region, you can make it work anywhere. Zach, how are you?
Thanks, Vinny. It's happy to be part of the conversation. Thanks.
Perfect. Before I hand it off to the team, a quick word on who I am and why I have the seat today. My name is Philip Terzik, and I lead the North American sales here at BIPO. My world is on-the-ground reality of payroll in the U.S. and Canadian markets, the state-by-state compliance complexities, the way North American enterprises actually make those technology decisions, and what it truly takes to execute global payroll strategies at the last mile. I'll be moderating today because I believe the best conversations happen when someone is asking the questions the audience is quietly thinking. And that's what I intend to do today. I don't have all the answers, but I know the right people to ask, and they're all with me to hear today. Together, we'll cover solutions, scale, and on-the-ground market reality. Before I pass it off to VA, Zach, if you wouldn't mind just giving everybody a brief introduction, a quick sense of who BIPO is and what it is that we stand for.
Absolutely. Thanks, Steve, again. Before we dive in, I think quick word on BIPO for those who are not familiar with us. We are a payroll and HR technology company based in Asia. And our headquarters is right here in Singapore, where I am based, right? We offer a comprehensive suite of HR solutions, including full HRMS platform, global payroll managed services, and employer of record services as well. We are Gartner recognized, Everest Good rank, and basically we help businesses scale across geographies, right, while staying compliant at a local level. Our solution actually covers more than 170 markets globally. But what really sets us apart is that we are built for Asia Pacific first, and that's where our deepest expertise lies. Now, as you can see, we have built 26 native payroll engines across the region, covering markets from Thailand to Cambodia to even Japan. So when we say we understand the complexity of running payroll across Asia Pacific, we mean it at an engine level, not just at the advisory level. And I think that distinction matters a lot to us because a lot of providers will actually tell you they cover APAC, right? But if you look under the hood, what they are really doing is either white labeling best breed of local payroll product or working through third-party vendors or aggregators behind the scene. There's nothing wrong with that, but it does mean that there's a layer of dependency between you and the actual compliance logic and local domain knowledge in each country. So for BIPO, we took a different path, right? We built the compliance, we built the calculation logics ourselves natively in each market. And when the rules change, for example, in Hong Kong, in China, and they do change constantly, right? We are not waiting for a particular partner to catch up. We are already on it. And to sum it up, right, I think before handing it back to Philip, we have a very simple tagline that I think captures everything really well, right? We make life easier because that's what really HR and payroll should feel like, even when the underlying complexity is anything but simple. So hand this back to Philip. Back to you.
Absolutely. That's what we're here to do, guys. We're here to make payroll as easy as possible. And one of the ways that we're going to do that is with today's presentation. Thank you, Zach, for the brief intro on BIPO. And with that being said, guys, I'm going to pass it over to VA, who is really going to dive into today's topic.
So, hi, everyone. I'll take you through what the future of payroll looks like. And hopefully you find it interesting. So you see Workday, Oracle, SuccessFactors, and so on in the middle. There are thousands of multinationals who deploy single software, but not a single multinational has a single payroll engine, primarily because it's very difficult to have a single payroll engine. Payroll is not like other HR pieces of software which stay consistent across the globe. Payroll changes from country to country. You have labor law related changes. You have compliance, last mile filing, and so on. So the payroll stays fragmented. You have in-country providers, you have multiple providers, and sometimes it's plain Excel sheet. So that's the reality for a company with very large number of countries they operate in a multinational. And in case you don't have a legal entity, you are also dealing with the complexity of EOR providers so that you can get the legal paperwork done. So what the kind of pain we have in the payroll today? One is payroll is a batch process. It is run on a particular day of the month. Then there is a cutoff typically a week before. And anything between the cutoff and the payroll run day is not considered in the transactions for paying the final pay. So that's an anomaly we live in and got used to living in, the cutoff date. The other thing is it's manual. You chase data, you chase files, very labor intensive. and you are awaiting files coming from attendance system, from core HR systems, and so on. And so that is a huge amount of manual work, huge amount of processing work, and all needs to be done within 24 to 36 hours. And you can always run into reconciliation problems, and often you may have to run payroll multiple times in a month for people leaving, for people joining, and some kind of workers may require a weekly payroll or a fortnightly payroll as well. So it's a fairly tedious job and fairly laborious job, with a lot of workload typically towards the month end. And the other problem we have is that as a new pay elements get added or payslip format is there or any change that takes place, it's very difficult to bring it in. And typically it is handled by the processing team rather than by the software team. And software team takes forever to make the changes in the software. And so that much manual processing needs to get done because the change is difficult to make. And most people are not able to make the changes in the system on a regular basis. The risk is if you have wrong payment, you have a severe regulatory issues, in certain cases, even legal issues and compliance problems leading to a lot of big fines. We have heard of huge amount of fines being levied in various countries for wrong payroll compute for various categories of workers. Australia being case in point, where 2 of the companies got fined a very huge amount for having computed the payroll wrongly. And the audit trails are typically missing, or sometimes the payroll is not explainable, the computation is not explainable, especially for difficult items like overtime and so on. And in case you are dealing with multiple vendors, in-country providers who might be running it on Excel sheet for you, for all you know. So you have the complete nightmare of the risk that you run as a company. So the question is, why now? This problem has been there forever, and generally it has not been solved. That's the reason we don't have a single provider globally who takes care of pretty much. Even if you contract to a single company, for example, ADP, you may still not have single vendors actually servicing you. You may have multiple vendors who in turn are aggregated by a single provider and shown to you. So you have a problem which has not been solved for so long. So why now? So one of the reasons we believe payroll needs to transform now is because one is the regulation is becoming much more, and especially it's topical now because major change will take place with the EU Pay Transparency Directive, which it's effective in June. And that means that everybody needs to be compliant with the fact that the pay disparity based on age, race, sex is not there. You need to have enough data to prove it. The other is people want access to their wages they have earned and not paid till month end. So earned wage access is a requirement, and people want to be able to draw cash against it, and it's becoming more and more bigger requirement as we go forward. And that means you should be able to compute a payroll at any moment of time, not till month end. And then we have workforce mobility. You have a lot of people now working remote, working citizen of country A, living in country B, and working for a global multinational headquartered in country C. So that brings its own range of complexities, tax, deductions, jurisdiction, and so on and so forth. And the other is the huge changes that are taking place on the AI front. Everybody's talking AI nowadays. Can payroll stay untouched from it, or is there a way that payroll can take advantage of it? So we believe that today's technology that is emerging makes it possible for companies to solve many of the problems that payroll has posed us over the years. Some problems may still not get solved, but pretty much many problems can get solved. So now we have here is somebody sitting in a car, reading a book or working on a laptop and so on and so forth. And recently, Tesla shipped latest robo taxis without any steering wheel, brake pedal, or accelerator. So, given the world that we are heading in, if the cars can self-drive itself, why can't we have a degree of autonomous payroll running as well? So, how can we make it autonomous, self-running? Is something we will explore in subsequent slides. So next-gen payroll is real-time autonomous. That means any employee should be able to say the earned wage till that date or till the previous day, if not till that moment. And if you want to run for somebody exits, joining, and so on and so forth, you can run at any time. And if you want to process an advance payment or a loan payment or an earned wage excess payment, you should be able to do that without having to run a full payroll. That means you can run it for a discrete person at any moment of time, or for a bunch of people at any moment of time. The other is it is intelligent. It should be able to detect an anomaly on its own, what looks unusual to it, and also should be able to explain or compute. How did I arrive at the figure that I arrived at? And something like, talk to my payslip. You talk to your payroll payslip and ask questions. It should be able to answer those questions to you. And configurable no code is so that you are not beholden to either the software provider of yours or your own IT department in case you're doing it in-house development. You should be able to, a functional expert on payroll should be able to add a pay element, make changes to a formula, and do some bit of coding on their own in normal plain English without requiring any programming. The other is conversational UI. The most latest announcement was from Salesforce, what they call headless Salesforce. Headless essentially means that you don't need to have screens or a formal login. Sitting in your Slack, you can ask a question. How has been my pay trend over past, let's say, 6 months? How has been my overtime trend and so on? So which payments have increased, which have decreased? Those kind of questions you can ask. Or you can summon a payslip. Give me my payslip for last 6 months or last month's payslip, or you want a salary certificate, you can get a salary certificate, all through conversation on Slack, Teams, or even WhatsApp. And the language is also not any barrier. The last is multi-currency. Essentially, the payroll can constitute 30 to 50% of any company's top line revenue. Just imagine every month trillions of dollars flow from Treasury Department sitting in the US or somewhere else in the headquarters of a company and going to various countries, making payment in local currencies. The amount of money that is in transit, typically 5 days, for which you earn nothing and for which you need to plan for, and the amount of foreign exchange losses that you cover, and also the losses cover on the bank charges you have on those kind of payments. So if all this can happen by some mean of cryptocurrency or stablecoin or something, that can give over an overall saving of $350 billion or more for the overall global corporations. So the next payroll platform is not a calculator or an Excel sheet. It's a global decision and execution engine and designed to take the pain away from 30 to 50% of your expense. So what does autonomous and real-time payroll means? One is it means death of payday. You don't need to define a cutoff date. So that means if your payroll runs on a month end, it runs on a month end. You don't have a formal cutoff date because all the inputs, if it's syncing into the system on a real-time basis. So if you have Workday or SuccessFactors or Oracle, if you are connected to the payroll engine, connected to that is auto-syncing every few minutes, then you have all the journeys, all the levers, all the promotions, all the transfers, pretty much everything available on a real-time basis for you to be able to offer payroll. You don't need to run a cutoff date or a readiness check or do back and forth chasing of people to get the data. Always on API, same thing, drawing upon the same thing that it is perpetually in sync with your system of record, be it any product. And once you start the calculation of the payroll engine, it will automatically check whether you have everything available. If not, it will automatically follow up. So you don't need to chase people. The system will chase it on your behalf. And if you continuously monitor the changes in the registration globally and make sure that you're updating to the latest changes and it's not an afterthought or a mistake. So basically, instead of going from monthly runs, it's continuous payroll, anytime payroll. Instead of file-based, it's real time. No manual cutoffs. No pay date, so you can have an on-wage access anytime. And you're not dependent on IT anymore. And the compliance tsunami, that I think is coming in Europe very soon, and I'm sure most of you would be ready. Those who have operations in Europe or European headquartered companies, you possibly will be ready with that. And just make sure that it makes it easy for you to draw out any report from your system without requiring help from IT. And the other is making sure that you are compliant and not in contravention of any law. When a person sits in Portugal as a UK citizen and works for an American company, so you are compliant with the laws of the country as per the prevalent laws. So if overseas income is taxed for a US citizen, then it is taxed for a US citizen, notwithstanding the fact where the person works for. Taking care of all that. Legislative pulse changes is, one is you can depend upon the consulting companies, the big fours and so on, to keep monitoring for you on a continuous basis. Or better, you can continuously monitor the various websites where those changes appear, and to the extent possible, stay current with what is happening in the world and try and incorporate pretty much everything automatically into your software. Yeah, anomaly detection, this is becoming mainstream now. We can see most products beginning to offer this, because that's where the main manpower spend goes. People produce a pay register, check with the previous month, whatever does not matches it, flag it as an anomaly. So all that consumes a huge amount of time, and that is something that AI can do relatively easily and can monitor last 6 months, 12 months data and see patterns, and automatically triage also what could be a reason in case they see a change. So this is the latest stuff. All of you would have seen Cloud Code come in and Cloud Open Cloud and various cool things happening globally. So everybody is a programmer, everybody is a citizen programmer, and so on and so forth. So while we still don't think we will encourage you to start coding on payroll yourself, but definitely wipe configuration is possible. Wipe configuration means that you can chat up with the system and it will configure for you the elements that are relevant to a country. If you're adding a new country, you just keep chatting up, it will start configuring for you. It's not a very formidable thing for you. And onboarding can be done via chat channels. You can and also keep chatting with the person being onboarded to make sure that on a constant basis you're reminding them of whatever they need to have before they are considered onboarding. And no code pay elements essentially is you can add pay elements. That's the biggest source of trouble anywhere. And define formula in plain English. The compute formulas that are applicable. Customize the layouts as you want, reporting layouts and everything else, without needing to raise a ServiceNow ticket or IT ticket, and without having to chase your IT department. You can drag and drop the workflows of your organization, and you can define cloud skills. For example, cloud skill could be onboard an employee or fetch attendance data or process areas, or and so on and so forth. So these are reusable skills. That means if a person is missing someday, you don't need to, you just execute this reusable skill. And day before, Cloud also launched something called Cloud Routine. If you want to do processing at, let's say, 10 p.m. every day and check whether every piece of data has come in or not, it will run 10 p.m. every day. And also ask it to send the reminders, it will send the reminders as well. So since the time we made presentation, there are enough improvements already in what the system can do. In self-service reporting is you in the chat ask, give me this data in this following format, which I can put in Excel, and we'll be able to give it to you. This is the most exciting part of it. Conversational payroll. Essentially, it is this chat is a primary interface. You don't need to be intimidated by any screen or app, any such thing. Your complete Slack channel or team channels is enough for you to get pretty much anything and everything done. And in case a screen needs to come up, the chat is capable of producing a screen as well. So essentially, you are chatting. You are not dealing with a bunch of things, and it can be simple screen like I want to take leave next Wednesday for 2 days, something like that, or give me all people who have applied for time off on these 2 dates from my team, or you can set rules. If more than 30% of the people will be absent on any particular time off, don't make any subsequent time off approval. So all these rules can be set up all by chatting itself or seeking any information itself. And pretty much you can run the payroll also by chat and load data also by chat. Just like those of you who got used to loading in either Cloud, Perplexity, or ChatGPT, the files, you can possibly load the files here as well. And say, okay, here I'm loading the attendance file or reimbursement file or something like that. So here we come to the last that possibly saves you the maximum money. First is payment using neutral currency, blockchain and stable coin, so that you don't have to pay currency conversion, you don't have to pay bank charges, and you don't have to block a huge amount of money. So treasury need not hold, let's say, 30% of your revenue and on hold for five days. You can need to have the sufficient money only on the last day. So that makes it very easy for your listening. And the other is the difficulty we face in expat pay and tax equalization. If you are a senior exec posted for, let's say, 6 months in Netherlands, you basically want your compensation to stay same. So if you're getting taxed more there, then you want it to be taken care of. So all those kind of things to be taken care of by the system itself. And of course, controls and guardrails just to make sure that you're enforcing the rules as applicable in a jurisdiction or as per the country of origin of the employee. And the humans are always available for you because they are still learning. So that's the key message we have on where the future of payroll is headed. And we, as you can see, up to $300 billion of money can be saved in forex losses or holding the currency, holding the amount for so long in your treasury, and of course the admin and other problems. Every large company has a fairly large team. Despite having a large team, they also have an outsourcing service provider. So it is not something of a trivial cost, so which is something which can get addressed by moving to next generation payroll, as I said. Thanks everyone for listening, and here we are at BIPO, making sure that you experience the future very soon.
Thank you so much, BA. That's exactly the reframe this conversation needed. I think what strikes me the most is that we're treating payroll as a processing problem for decades. And what you've laid out is is that it's actually a strategic one. I want to dig in with the three of you because the deck raised a lot of questions that I know the audience is sitting with right now. So we can go ahead and get right into it. VA, I'll go ahead and start with you. You opened with the line that I think will stay with a lot of people, right? HR became the single source of truth, while payroll became the single source of stress. For a CFO or a CHRO watching today, where does the business case for transformation actually start? Is it a cost conversation, a risk conversation, or something else entirely?
I don't think either or. It's both. Cost is definitely a factor. Risk is a bigger factor, and the fact is that given the complexity of global operations, how to deal with it in a manner which makes employee have a consistent experience. It should be that your employees in the United States have a much far better experience than employees elsewhere. So how to give a consistent experience across the globe. Obviously, all CFOs have to be interested because typically all large companies will be dealing, who are present in 100 plus countries, will be dealing with 15, 20, sometimes 30, 40 vendors. Even if they think they are dealing with 5 vendors, they are actually dealing with another 50 behind the scenes who are hiding behind this 5. So there is a degree of things going wrong. There's a degree of compliance issue. There's a degree of running into regulatory problem and also the fraud. So all these possibilities are there, and I'm sure CFOs would definitely not want to have any of this nonsense.
Yeah, absolutely. And you brought up something, really that probably strikes a chord with a lot of the people that are listening today. The multiple different platforms, the multiple different sign-ons, the experiences that the employees are going to be faced with. Frank, that's going to lead me to a great question for you, right? Many enterprise HRs and finance leaders, they still believe that they can manage global complexities by stitching together these local vendors, right? At what point does that model stop working? When do they need to make that decision, and what does that decision to unify the platform actually look like from a cost standpoint? Not a monetarily cost, but from a time and complexity standpoint. Why would a company potentially delay it?
That's a great question, Philip. I think what I feel is that model typically works in early stages when organizations are in a few countries and complexity is manageable. But it starts to break down when scale increases, especially when you are operating across multiple regions and no longer have a single view of the payroll. I've seen organizations managing 7 to 8 countries where everything was working until leadership asked for a consolidated view, and it took weeks to pull together. So the tipping point is when payroll stops being a processing activity and starts impacting visibility, the speed, and decision making. That's when team spends more time managing vendors and reconciling data that actually running payroll. So what I feel is, and the cost of delaying the move is often underestimated because it's not just financial. It shows up as time lost in manual reconciliation, increasing operational complexity, higher compliance risk, and an inconsistent employee experience across countries in a multi-country setup. So the biggest cost of delay is not money, it's loss of control. And in the regions like Asia, where regulatory diversity is quite high, this becomes even more critical because scale without structure quickly becomes risk. So what we are seeing is not necessarily to move to a single global payroll engine, but a unified orchestration layer that brings consistency, control, and visibility across local providers. I think that's what I feel like the organization should focus on.
Yeah. No, that's a great answer too, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be a single engine, right? But as long as it's a single point of contact where all the employees are experiencing the same, regardless of whatever country they're in, I think that's the end goal too. Zach, I'm going to kind of piggyback off what Frank said and lean into you, right? The APAC region is probably one of the hardest where payroll surfaces first, right? There's multiple jurisdictions, multiple languages, labor laws, and all this is running at one time. What does transformation actually look like when you're dealing with this level of complexity? And what do MNCs consistently underestimate going in?
Yeah. So, you know what, Philip? Whenever I'm being asked this question, there's many layers to this, right? And it's really hard to give a concrete answer. But please let me try. If you think about in the US, right, you're probably dealing with one federal framework and maybe 50 states of variations, right? That sounds complex, and operationally it is complex, but fundamentally, if you think about it, right, you're working within one language, right? One single currency and one general banking infrastructure. Broadly, just one employment law philosophy. And if you look at the US market, the vendor ecosystem perhaps has been very mature for decades, right? Yes, Europe is generally very complex. If you have the what VA has touched on just now, the EU Pay Transparency Directive, you have work councils in Germany, and maybe in multiple jurisdictions, you have 30 months. Now, if you think about APAC, now back to the question, right? Why is APAC the hardest? Now you try it in APAC. APAC is not one single market, right? If APAC region spans across, depending on how you define it, East Asia, Southeast Asia, South Asia, Oceania. And the common business definition, if you looked up, it often lists that in APAC, there are more than 20 core nations in this region. And I'll give you something to think about as well, right? You got 16 distinct payroll jurisdictions across just Southeast Asia, 16. And I've seen this happening all the time, right? Organizations, they come from America, they come from Europe, into APAC with a center of excellence model. And it worked beautifully in America and in the Europe region. But then they hit a wall in month 3. Because nobody told them in the Philippines there are mandatory government remittance to 4 agencies, right? Each with their own submission format. And then in China, social contribution rates, they vary city by city. And it all falls apart after that. It is not because of technology fails, but because it's just that in APAC, the exception rate in this region is structurally higher than anywhere else. So if you can grasp what I've just mentioned over the past few minutes, right? Hopefully I answered the first part of the question, why APAC is the hardest. Right? I can have conversation again with you, Philip. You can come back to me and say US is harder because of this and that, right? But this is my view, right? This is what I see. I'll give you more example, right? Like when I say exception rate in APAC is structurally higher than anywhere else, what do I mean by that? Now, if in Malaysia, for example, overtime rules are different from Singapore. They are calculated differently, whether the employee is money rated, daily rated. Now, in the Philippines, probation period, right? Probation period pay has specific rules that probably sit outside of the standard payroll engine. In other regions, maybe I think in Philippines also in Philippines, the 30-month pay accrues on a specific statutory calendar, right? And it doesn't map to a global payroll platform that cleanly. You have to pay 30 months on a specific date. If I remember correctly, that's 24th of December. It doesn't map cleanly to a fiscal year. It doesn't map cleanly to how most global payroll define, their pay calendar. Now, it's a bit long-winded, right? But at the end of the day, I'm getting to my point. The result is that if you think about APAC, right? APAC payroll runs usually carry higher manual intervention. And VA talk about this, right? You run once a month, there's a file-based interface. You think about time attendance. interfacing manually, bringing overtime to payroll, and etc. Now, a 2% exception rate, if you think about it, per country sounds manageable, right? But across 15 countries in APAC, if you're running payroll concurrently, it compounds. And I always like to say this, right? And I'm coming to the end. APAC is not the United States of Asia, right? And there's no APAC equivalent of EU. And that's the thing that I think MNC constantly underestimate when they try to come and implement a global model that works in America, that works in Europe, and they try to do the same in APAC, and they run into issues. And I know, Philip, that I said at the very beginning, I have this conversation with you several times, right? And I actually like to bring you in here because you probably see this from a different angle, right? Where you are based company that's headquartered in North America, that is expanding into APAC, or the reverse, right? Well, where do you see this initiative most commonly break down, right? Is it a technology problem, compliance problem? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question, and I think it's a two-part question, right? So we'll look at it from U.S. companies expanding globally, right? Whether that be the APAC region, EU, Africa, wherever it might be. I think it's a cultural thing, right? I think you said it best that even though each state has their own jurisdictions, it's still one language, one currency. Everybody understands that taxes are going to be taken out. Once we go into APAC, China's rules are different than Singapore's rules, than Korea's rules, than Laos's rules. It's a whole different ballpark, right? And the HR professionals that we have here in the US, they already have so much on their plate, right? Yes, they're SHRM certified, and yes, they know the complexities across all the 50 states that we have here and some of the US territories. That's a lot in and of itself to deal with, right? So when we're expanding globally, having a resource like an EOR, right, where I don't have to register to be a business in this country. I don't have to file for tax filings in every single jurisdiction that my employees just happen to be into. I think resources like that we offer are a great solution for these U.S. companies that are looking to expand globally, right? Up until that point, when they reach that threshold where EOR doesn't make sense financially anymore, now we have to look at it from a global standpoint, global payroll standpoint too. Now, the return on it is the APAC countries that are expanding into the US, right? They're accustomed to, potentially once monthly payroll, right? Or, maybe the user experience isn't something that is most prevalent to them, right? Whereas, again, it's a cultural shift here, right? Benefits being applied, benefits being taken out, 401k contributions, PTO calculations, whatever it might be. It's just a different animal from both spectrums, right? Whether you're coming from A to B or B to A, they're just two completely different experiences, and how they're handled in one country is going to be completely different than how they're handled in another country too. So it's a big shift, right? And when you have a solution, when you have a partner there that can help you make that shift that much easier, it just makes your job, whether you're the CFO, the CHRO, the CEO, that much easier along the way too. Now, VA, I kind of want to, bring you into this conversation as well, right? Tell me a little bit about the payroll landscape in Asia as it is today, especially around the on-demand pay or even the early wage access that you discussed earlier.
Yeah. See, payroll in Asia is extremely fragmented. There are not enough players in the market to service all the countries. And I think BIPO, our attempt is to be the single stop for Asia. In just China alone, we have 7 physical locations where our office is there. So essentially what we are saying is for Asia, we want to be single stop shop with people everywhere, because the jurisdiction complexity varies a lot. And in terms of early wage access, it is many companies are offering this, but as a separate offering, not necessarily the payroll provider. So there are a lot of startups in this space. There are a lot of companies in this space who tie up with the payroll providers. and offer this. The precursor to that is that you should be able to compute the earned wages on a fly. That's a main item, and that means being able to run payroll at any moment of time, and that's a technology issue that is there. And yeah, I think single software running whole of Asia, having local processing, local filing, local language support is something very difficult and not many. And if some company in US claims that they are providing, they're obviously using some other providers. So the fact is that there is nobody in the market, and that's what BIPO has done, is to pan out across the region and have a local legal entity and local people available, local phone number, local people, local office to offer this as a service. So right from Japan to Australia to New Zealand to multiple locations in China, in South Korea, Taiwan, all of Southeast Asia. So the main reason of proliferation is that however much the technology is good, but we definitely need the local regulation, local filing, local compliance, and being able to answer any query in the local language. So I think the unpaid access is evolving, and I think the technology will play a big role in making it available at real-time basis. And also certain regulations are applicable in certain markets. There is various governments may not necessarily easily allow it, may be treated as a loan or something, because they're also worried that people may spend money much and may have nothing left the month end. So that's where we are. There is fair bit of progress in early wage access. I would say there are not providers, but yes, it will embed itself into the payroll provider sometimes.
And V, I have a follow-up question for you, right? When we're talking about, all these forces coming together, right? New regulations, cross-border complexities, real-time expectations, everything that we kind of talked about today. What does that actually mean for the payroll practitioners that are in the room, right? Are we heading towards a world where the payroll manager role looks fundamentally different, or does it disappear entirely?
It doesn't disappear. One is the army of support people that we have can possibly get replaced by an AI help desk. That's the first low-hanging fruit that we see. So if you have, say, 20 people in your HR support in the region, or 30, 40 people in the HR and payroll support, that can come down to 3-4 people, because you should be able to talk to your payslip or a payroll or the HR system. And you should be able to get pretty much every transaction done by chatting. So that takes a level of complexity away, training away, and so on and so forth. So that is something that we immediately see. Second is, we see a lot of automation of you not having to click A, B, C, D or check for something. That is likely to get automated. So what we see with open cloud skills and so on and so forth, that will start permeating into the payroll domain. So you don't need to do the 15, 20 steps you do every month to process the payroll and chase people for input. That is something the agents will do for you. So that's one big change I would say will happen. It will give people time to focus on compliance, to make sure they are doing the right thing, paying the right thing, rather than be caught in the drudgery of doing spreadsheet management or accounting work. That's what I see.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think we tell people all the time, right? Especially when we're bringing in new technology, it's not meant to be a replacement for anybody, right? It's just really meant to be a tool for them to use to make their job more efficient, to make their job that much easier, so that they can focus on the end of the day those revenue generating tasks as well. When we talk about on-demand pay and early wage specifically here in the U.S., there is a shift towards it right now, especially in industries such as staffing and manufacturing and retail. Specifically around retail, just because the cost of living here in the U.S. is not proportionate to that of what the wages of some of these roles are, right? So people, if they can have access to these wages and it not be a disturbance for those payroll managers and not be an extra tasks that they have to do, it just makes everybody's job that much easier at the end of the day, right? Not just the employees, but also the payroll managers too. Now, I know that's a little bit different, and Zach, this question is going to be directed a little bit at you, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Salaries in Asia, they're generally wired once a month, and that's pretty much the norm, right?
Yeah, right. That's the general practice that we see here. It's baked into employment contracts, banking infrastructure, how finance team manages cash flow, etc., etc. So if you think about, back to what we were talking and what we were saying earlier on about on-demand pay, if you move from this monthly payroll thing, right, to on-demand, you're probably not changing just a pay date, right? You're probably asking the entire payroll operating model to shift, to change, right? And this change will be a big change, right? That companies have to be ready for.
Yeah, and then from an employee standpoint, your boots on the ground there in the APAC region, is this something that we're actually seeing that employees are pushing for, or is this still just one of those nice to have HR features that we're yet to deploy? What is it from your take that the employees are saying?
So APAC, for on demand, right now it's more maybe commonly known as earn wage access, EWA nowadays. In APAC, we are witnessing the fastest growth rate globally, right, for EWA. And when we look at the numbers, this growth is led by India, Indonesia, and perhaps the Philippines. Reason, the rise of app-based gig platforms and the rapid digital banking adoption in this country are the primary drivers. But again, whether the employees are pushing for it, my honest answer is I think it depends, right? For now, I think it depends on especially the type of industry and the type of workers. Now, for example, in India, in the Philippines, in Indonesia, employers in the BPO and manufacturing sectors, they are now probably losing a lot of hourly workers to gig platforms, right? If you think about Grab, Lalamove, the local equivalents in US, there's Uber, right? And all this partly because the platform pay fast, right? A shift ends and then money moves into the bank account. That's it. Now, traditional employers sitting on a 30-day pay cycle, you pay once a month, you cannot compete on that dimension. So on-demand pay in this sort of market, in this sort of industry, it's not a nice to have, right? But it's a sort of retention lever, right? Now, if you think even broadly, other industries such as retail, healthcare, hospitality, and even logistics and transportation sector, I think they're probably going to see this same trend coming, right? But I think the more forward-looking piece, and this is what the session today is about, the future of payroll. This is where I think the conversation gets really interesting. The next phase is not about employees. They can actually pull wage early, right? The more sophisticated version of this is what I think VA has just mentioned, right? It's continuous payroll, right? And this is where the system will know you're earning in real time, and it's synced to time attendance. Think about it, right? Data continuously, and EWA on-demand pay, like what you say, is just one of the output of the engine. This is just one. When you have continuous payroll, there's many changes that is coming up. And I give you another example. In Australia, the single touch payroll system is just a landmark, a good example, right? The government mandate that actually forced all companies to report payroll data to tax authority in real time with every pay run. Now, this is the model that a lot of other APAC countries, a lot of government, I believe, right, they are watching it closely. If it works, you'll see this happening in Singapore, in Hong Kong, and in even China very soon, right? So what I'm saying is that Actually, my honest take is that for the next 2-3 years in APAC, blue collars, vestless employees, shift-based workers in this market with very high gig exposure, right? This is where on-demand pay will go from pilot to production. And countries, more developed countries like Singapore, Hong Kong, where there are more white collars workers, that form majority of the working population, the demand might be softer.
Yeah, no, I think that makes perfect sense too, and I think we've seen it just with payroll technology, right? As the world changes, the demand for everything changes too, right? So as the demand for some of these earned wage roles increases in certain countries, I'm sure we're going to see the increase for the need for those types of services as well. Now, Frank, that's going to lead me over to you, right? We're going to kick it back a little bit to what VA had said earlier, discussing the 5 pillars, right? Real-time, intelligence, configurable, conversionable, conversational, and borderless. Which one, when you're speaking with clients, do you think that they're most surprised by? And then which one do they not know they needed until they saw it?
Yeah, I think these are the key tenets what VA mentioned. I think the payroll has to be real time and intelligent, configurable, conversational, like with the advent of chat GPTs, Claude, and all of that, right? And more borderless. But interestingly, the one that surprises most client during my engagements is not so much as the real time or even borderless. It is the intelligent layer. Most organizations come in thinking payroll is about processing and ensuring compliance. But I've seen cases where payroll was running fine across countries, but inconsistencies like in allowances or tax treatments only surfaced after payroll was processed. Sometimes even from the employee queries, right? Through that they come to know. But when they start seeing capabilities like anomaly detection, predictive insights, and kind of an automated validations, even before the payroll is run, they realize payroll can actually become a decision support function, right? Not just an operational one. And what's interesting is this is not something they were actively asking for. It's something they discover during the journey, especially when they start dealing with scale and complexity across multiple countries. Clients don't come asking for intelligence, right? So, but once they see it, they can't go back. So in regions like Asia, where payroll complexity is quite high, that intelligence layer becomes even more valuable. So once they see it, they can't go back, and because it helps organizations manage variability, the compliance, and risk much more proactively, they quickly get into this and say that, hey, can I have my pay records, the pay histories for last 10 years or 15 years get migrated into your system so that it becomes more productive and more prescriptive for me, to manage my payroll. So I would say that that's the shift we are seeing, right? From payroll as a processing engine to payroll as an intelligent layer, for the enterprises. So that's precisely I would say among these key tenets, while all of them are important, that the intelligence that brings in and the forethought that it brings into the organizations, I think that's where clients look for.
Perfect. And then I'm going to open this question up to you, Frank. I'd love to hear your answer from a solutions point of view, right? How do you sell the vision of everything that we've kind of talked about today to a CFO?
I think one of the one thing, if I need to pick up now for the audience today, right, from a leadership perspective for the payroll leaders, most payroll leaders are still treating payroll as an operational process, right? Not a strategic function. And what that means in practice is they focus on getting payroll done rather than using payroll data to drive decisions, right? So they end up with fragmented systems, reactive to issue handling, and limited visibility across countries, right? So but payroll sits at the very powerful intersection, right? So where like we have mentioned, it's like your HR, finance, and compliance, and when connected properly, all of them, right? It can provide real insights into workforce cost, the risks, and planning, right? And this becomes even more critical in regions like Asia, right, where complexity is high, because without the right structure and orchestration of these intersection points, the scale quickly turns into chaos, right? So the shift leaders like CFOs and CHROs like need to make is from processing payroll to orchestrating and leveraging it as an enterprise capability, right? Uh, because payroll is one of the largest cost centers in any company, right? It is one of the least leveraged for insights, right? So what would they do differently, right? Start by connecting payroll into the broader ecosystem, right? Take your payroll to your broader ecosystem, connect it like HR, your time, finance, and creating a unified view, right? Before trying to optimize individual pieces. So that's like no, which I would say that no, the leaders have to pick up. If I would say like no one point, which they need to take payroll to the center of their ecosystem.
Perfect. Now, I know we're coming up on time for today's session, so one final question that I want to leave with all of you all, and we'll go VA, you first, Frank, you after, and then Zach, you're going to wrap us up. What's one thing that most payroll leaders in the audience today are probably still getting wrong? VA, go ahead and kick us off.
I think they are seeing it, as Frank had mentioned earlier, as an operational thing, not as a strategic thing, because if this is the single biggest cost element you have, then you have to basically slice and dice in 1,000 different ways. You need to have a comparison as what percentage of your revenue goes to payroll compared to your competition in similar industry. So those kind of questions have to come up. If you're in fast food industry, McDonald's may want to compare with Burger King and so on and so forth. If you can't get those answers, then you don't know whether you're overstaffed or you are, at least compared to competition. So it has to be used as a strategic input and not as just something to be done with and get over with and stay compliant somehow.
Frank?
Yeah, I can agree more than like what you mentioned. I think the key is, like I said before, right? I think the leaders have to look like payroll as a critical function in the organization that needs to be discussed in the boardrooms, right? So because the insights what the payroll gives, together with the other insights, together with the other data points and within the ecosystem, is tremendous. So I think the leaders have to look into how do you have an harmonized and unified system that brings payroll as a centerpiece here, and as well as like across the borders, how do you bring forward these data into play that where the data is going to be gold mine for them. So I think that's what critically they need to look into. I think that's what I would say, that how they can orchestrate this and scale quickly forward.
Zach?
No, sometimes I hate going last because the VA and Frank has mentioned a lot of I think really good points. I can only perhaps echo what they say. I think I agree with them. If I were to sum it up, it's really about not. I still remember what Frank said this just now. It's about organization not using payroll data intelligently enough, right, to make business decisions. I think that's the key thing. I think it's one thing that payroll leaders are perhaps still not getting there. And this reminds me of a conversation I had with a CHRO. And this is a real example, right? We work with their organization across Southeast Asia. And when we look at how they run their payroll, payroll corrections, retroactive adjustment, if you think about it, off-cycle runs, they were running it at about 12 to 15% kind of correction, right, per cycle. And their team still say that this is normal because that's how it is, right? But if you really have a payroll leader that understand this, you probably, the next course of action, you probably do a mapping of this correction, right? And sometimes you can discover that they cluster around a specific entity, specific pay elements, or specific managers not approving timesheet on a timely manner. At the end of the day, right, this is not a payroll problem anymore. It becomes an organizational governance problem, right? And if you are a payroll leader, you'll probably see that from a payroll data. And that's where payroll data gives you the earliest warning sign for it. And people are still not using this intelligently enough, right? So this is just one example, that one conversation I had with the CHRO, and I think it resonates a lot with me. And if you think about it, and hopefully, right, Philip, you see the same kind of thing happening in US, right? But I would love to get your thoughts, Philip, on what you think. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think, now me going last, you all said some wonderful things too, but I think it's a summary of kind of what we talked about today. There are tools out there. There are tools that are actively being produced. There are tools that are there to make your lives easier. I mentioned it before. The tools that are being implemented are not meant to take over your job. They are meant to make your job that much easier. So utilize those tools as payroll leaders, as HR leaders, to make your life easier, to make the employees' lives that much simpler, and really just make the organization that much more synchronized and unified in what the end goal is that you're looking to obtain. Now, VA, Zach, Frank, thank you all so much for joining me. What's clear from this conversation is that payroll touches every single person in the organization every single month, and most of it is still being run on processes built 20 years ago. The gap between where payroll is and where it needs to be, that's not a technology problem anymore. That's a decision problem, and the decision sits with the people in this room. If today has sparked that thinking for you, then we have done our job. Now, to the audience, we'd love to continue this conversation with you. I am based in the US, so if you are operating or expanding into North America, that is my world. But the heartbeat of what BIPO is and what BIPO stands for is in Asia. Zach and Frank are boots on the ground in that region, embedded in those markets, fluid in those complexities. Whether you're navigating payroll across Southeast Asia, North Asia, or even further, that is where we're strongest, and that is where we're built our depth. 26 native payrolls across APAC isn't a talking point. It's the result of years of doing the hard work that most providers haven't. So if your organization is still thinking about your future for global payroll, you've got the right people in the room today. Do look us up. We have our contact information on the next slide. But one thing I did want to note as well is that this year, BIPO will be at PayCon 2026 in Nashville, Tennessee, happening May 12th through the 15th. So if you are going to be attending that event, please swing by our booth. We are booth number 1023. Please again thank me in appreciating our wonderful speakers, VA, our panelists, Frank and Zach. Thank you all so much. Our contact information is on the screen, but please also reach out to us all on LinkedIn. We are all more than happy to connect with you. Thank you all and have a wonderful day.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you, everybody.